Hey everyone, today we're going to start to solve quadratic equations by factoring. So the process of solving quadratic equations is different from the process of solving linear equations. Those are the ones with variable with the exponent of 1. Linear equation, you're trying to get the variable you're solving for on one side, everything else on the other. When you're solving a quadratic, you want the variable you're solving for. You need to follow the following. You need to set the equation equal to 0, factor if possible, using our methods we learned in the last part, and then set each factor equal to 0. This is slight deviation when solving using perfect square trinomials that we'll go over in some example problems. So what we want to do is the reason why we want to set each factor equal to 0 is because we're using the property that if I know a times b equals 0, when we're multiplying two things, one of those has to equal 0, because the only way to get 0 as an answer is if a or b equals 0. So then we solve our little equations. So our first example. So we have 9x squared plus x equals 0. So it already equals 0, so we don't need to do that step. Next, we want to look at what's on the left side, and we want to factor this. Well, binomials, remember, can really only be factored by either a GCF or a difference of two squares. This I can factor using a GCF of x, so it's x parentheses 9x plus 1 equals 0. Now I have two factors equal to 0, so I can use the idea that if when I multiply two things I get 0, then one of those has to equal 0. So I take each factor, set it equal to 0. So x equals 0 or 9x plus 1 equals 0. X equals 0 is already solved. I need to solve 9x plus 1, and I do that like I normally do. So I subtract 1, and then I divide both sides by 9. I get x equals negative 1/9. So the two possible answers are 0 and negative 1/9. Both of those will check in that problem. Example 2. Notice this one, x squared plus 6x equals 7, does not equal 0. So the first thing I need to do is make it equal 0. So I subtract 7 from both sides, and I get x squared plus 6x minus 7 equals 0. Now that it equals 0, I want to look at x squared plus 6x minus 7, and I want to factor that just like we were before. So I'm looking for numbers that multiply to be negative 7, that add to be 6. So that would be x minus 1 and x plus 7. So x squared plus 6x minus 7 factored is x minus 1 times x plus 7. I then take each one of those, x minus 1 equals 0, and x plus 7 equals 0. I set each factor equal to 0 because if they multiply to be 0, one of them has to be 0. And then I solve those mini equations. So I get x equals 1 and x equals negative 7. So my two possible solutions are 1 or negative 7. Now we can use this to solve word problems. The formula h equals vt minus 16t squared gives the height of a rocket after t seconds when the initial velocity is given in feet per second. If a rocket is fired with initial velocity of 2288, so we're going to substitute that in for v, how many seconds will it take for it to reach the height of 6720? So we're going to substitute 6720 for h. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make this equal 0. So I don't like to factor when t is negative. So I'm going to add 16t squared and subtract 2288t from both sides. So that gives me 16t squared minus 2288t plus 6720 equals 0. Now, that's significantly large. They're at least all even. I'm going to check to see if I can divide everything by 16. And I can. So I'm going to divide everything on both sides by 16. I'm allowed to do this because it's an equation. And with an equation, you can divide by anything that you want as long as you do it to everything. So I get t squared minus 143t plus 420 equals 0. Now my numbers are significantly smaller, so now I want to factor. So I'm looking for numbers that multiply to be 420, that add to be negative 143, and that is 3 and 140. So that factored is t minus 3 times t minus 140 equals 0. So then I set each one equal to 0. T minus 3 equals 0. T minus 140 equals 0. So t equals 3 seconds or t equals 140 seconds. So in this problem, it's how many seconds will it take the rocket to reach a height of 620? So remember, a rocket would go up and come down. So it's actually at 2 spots that it's at the height I want, 3 seconds and 140 seconds. So now I want you to pause and I want you to do questions number 1, number 5, 6, and pause and do those 3. Oh, actually, let's do 10 as well. Pause and do those 4. Come back and check. So number 1 is already factored. So I just set each factor equal to 0. X equals 0. X plus 3 equals 0. Solve this little mini equation. So the solution is x equals 0, x equals negative 3. 5, again, is already factored. So I set each factor equal to 0. So 4a plus 3 equals 0. 8a plus 7 equals 0. I solve those mini equations. Subtract 3 from both sides. And I'm going to divide by 4 on both sides. And one solution is a equals negative 3/4. I solve the other mini equation. And then the other solution is a equals negative 7/8. Number 6 does not equal 0 yet, so I have to make it equal 0. So I subtract 25t from both sides. So I have 5t squared minus 25t equals 0. I'm going to factor out the GCF of 5t, which gives me t minus 5 equals 0. I then set each of those equal to 0, so 5t equals 0, t minus 5 equals 0. Divide both by 5, t equals 0. Add 5 to both sides, t equals 5. Then the last one to solve is number 10. So this already equals 0, so I need to factor x squared minus 4x plus 3. So that's x minus 3 times x minus 1 equals 0. I set each factor equal to 0, so x minus 3 equals 0, x minus 1 equals 0. So I get x equals 3 and x equals 1. So that is the end of our video for today. We will work more on these problems tomorrow in class.